All right, looks like it's 5:05, so we can go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Kaylee Carver. I'm a clean water specialist with the Beltrami Soil and Water Conservation District, and we're joined here today with Stan Grossman of Itasca Woodland Services. We're going to learn a little bit about forest stewardship and forest stewardship plans. Thank you for joining us. So just to get started, we offer a cost share service for forest stewardship plans. And when you get that cost share through us, we provide you this list of foresters that are approved by the DNR. We're not legally allowed to support one forester over another. Everyone on this list does great work. We've just been very lucky today to have Stan joining us to present. And then this is just a quick little infographic about how the cost share process works when it comes to receiving some funds from the Beltrami Soil and Water Conservation District for your forest stewardship plan. So you can see you'd start up there at the top of the page, contacting me at the district, filling out that application, getting it approved, and then reaching out to a forester like Stan from that list and having that plan written, and then you would get paid for having the plan written. And from there, you can move on to some incentive programs that Stan will talk about later. So that's just a quick little intro from me that we've got some cost share here and that we have to support a variety of foresters. So if you have any questions on cost share in general, you can reach out to me at the Beltrami Soil and Water Conservation District. I've got my email and number here on the screen. But now we'll go on to Stan's presentation. And like I said earlier, he is a forester with Itasca Woodland Services. And let me stop sharing my screen. And then Stan, I don't know if you wanted to share your screen.
Yeah, so I have a compilation of notes that I'm going to be working off of, but I thought it'd be helpful for people to just to see those so that, I know what that's like when you're trying to listen to somebody and follow along. So,
Mhm.
can you see my screen
Yes.
now? May 27th, webinar presentation. Yeah, so thanks everybody for joining us. Again, I'm Stan Grossman. I own Itasca Woodland Services in Grand Rapids. We serve basically the northern third of Minnesota. Um, I've been in forestry since 1988, started this company in 1996. So we are celebrating our 30th anniversary this year, which is great. We've got a small staff of 5 full and part-time employees, and including myself. And it's a pleasure to be here. So my goal for this relatively short time together is to give you kind of a baseline foundation of information about stewardship plans, what they are, what's in them, and for the 2 financial incentive programs that you can choose from when you have a stewardship plan. Um, it's probably going to be about 20 minutes, give or take, but well, if you have questions as you think of them, go ahead and drop them in the chat, and I'll try to circle back to them. We can just take them top down, first to last. But please know that you will likely have more questions, especially about SFIA. So, and then also I have our office administrator also online, and at some point she'll send a general message to you that if you want to talk to me later, we can schedule a phone chat, but you can just message her directly. I'm assuming you can do that on Teams, right? Just message a single individual, I think. Yeah.
Yes. You should be able to
Okay.
message directly.
Okay. Yeah. And her name is Sheila. So with that, what is a woodland stewardship plan? Well, show of hands, first of all, who doesn't already have a stewardship plan? If you could just hit the raise your hand button on the top, that'd be just good to know. What's that, 4? What, half of you? 5? Okay. So a stewardship plan is just it's a document that outlines kind of the natural resources that are on your property, and provides some recommended management approaches and alternative options that are based on your unique goals. So that's really important to us. We want to know what your goals are for the property. And then we go out to the property and hopefully with you if possible. And we get a good look at the property. Um, we're going to be mapping it out based on what I would call different cover types. And I might say cover types for management units or stands. Those are all basically the same thing. They're just an area of woods that we would differentiate from the rest because we might have a different kind of management strategy for that particular stand. Usually that's based on species composition, age, condition, health, that kind of thing. So we go into the property and walk it with you preferably. If not, we can do it on our own. And then we're going to be identifying all the different cover types that would have their own unique management strategy, so to speak. Um, and so, and then what is included in a stewardship plan? There are basic requirements of a stewardship plan that every plan has to have, and every consultant is going to write theirs a little bit differently, I assume. But here, so how we do it at Itasca Woodland Services is the first page is always going to be like property information and goals. Who owns it? What are the parcel numbers? How many acres? What are the legal descriptions? What are your estimated acres that are eligible for the two programs I'm going to talk about later? And then your goals are going to be on there. So that's the first page. Second page is going to be, and I think Sheila, if you haven't already, she's going to put a link into a sample stewardship plan from our website that you can maybe look at as you want to during this presentation. But so the second page would be the cover type and map legend, cover type map and legend, which shows you all the different cover types that we've identified, and a legend, how many acres are in each type. And then following that, there's going to be possibly some other maps and some general information about access to your property, the soils found on your property, surrounding land management strategies that are occurring, possible rare natural features found in or nearby your property, and then some tips for general wildlife management practices and some other things. So that's the first section basically. And then after that, we get into the meat and potatoes of your specific property. Each cover type or stand that we have identified, we're going to treat, we're going to talk about individually. We'll give a general stand description, kind of in paragraph form. Here's what we found on your in this stand, and it's going to cover things like general age and stand condition or their health or insect disease issues, what's in the understory, what kind of trees are growing in the understory, what kind of shrubs are growing there. So it's just kind of a general paragraph form description. After that, we've got some tables that show things like the site quality, timber quality, and then it might will list the species of trees and shrubs found in the understory. And that might not seem important, but the trees and shrubs growing in the understory, but essentially you can think of that as like what that forest will become in the absence of a disturbance or active management. The trees and shrubs growing there is what's going to take over when your overstory dies off. Then there'll be a table about the estimated timber volume. And that is an estimate. It's just it's not the kind of stuff you would use for a timber sale. The stewardship plan as a whole, you can think of as like a conceptual document. It's a starting point for making decisions with, some input from foresters. So, um, excuse me. Then we go on to, we'll establish an objective for that particular stand based on, again, your goals and the condition of that stand. And we'll give you a recommended management activity to accomplish sometime in the next 10 years. And then some alternative suggestions. And a lot of times, it's just leave as is, it's a 5-year-old aspen stand and there's nothing to do here, so, but we do break it down. And we do that for each cover type that we've identified. And then at the end, we'll do there's a 1-page management summary that just kind of breaks it all down, makes it easy to view on 1 page. On our stewardship plans, we like to, they average probably 45 pages. And that's a lot to buzz through and flip back and forth. So we try to put hyperlinks in there to easily go back and forth. Yeah, the management summary table, we'll have a priority management recommendation, kind of like, hey, if you do nothing else, do this, if applicable. And one thing to know about that's important because I get this confusion a lot, a stewardship plan, you can get a stewardship plan for your property without enrolling in the financial incentive programs they'll talk about. That's perfectly okay. You just can't get one of the financial incentive programs without having a stewardship plan. So you can think of the stewardship plan. This is a standalone document that is useful on its own merits. Hopefully, that's what we aim for. But when you have it, then you are then eligible for enrolling in one of the following 2 programs. Kaylee, do you have any questions so far? Am I missing anything, gapping anything?
I don't have any questions. I'm not seeing
Okay.
any in the chat either. And just in
Okay.
case we forgot to mention it, folks, if you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to just drop them in the chat or in the Q&A, or raise your hand and we can answer them as they
Okay.
come up. Or at the very end. We'll have time for a Q&A at the very end.
Okay. Sheila just popped in and said it's not letting her type in the chat or something to that effect.
Oh,
So,
interesting. So maybe the Q&A, hold on, let me do some work.
anyways, while you're doing that, I'll carry on. All right, Kaylee, is that okay? Okay. So,
Yes.
okay. So like I said, when you have a stewardship plan on your property, that's less than 10 years old, you are eligible to enroll in one of 2 financial incentive programs. You can't be in them both, but you can choose one or the other, for any particular parcel of your land. So the first one, is the long version is 2C managed forest land tax classification. I'll be referring to that as 2C tax from now on. And the other one is the Sustainable Forest Incentive Act. I'll refer to that as SFIA from this point on. So there are some similarities in the programs, or things that are similar about enrolling in them at least. And number one is you have to have a minimum of 20 eligible acres. So if you have a 20-acre parcel and a house on it, you will not be eligible for either one of these for their own particular reasons. So you have to have a minimum of 20 eligible acres, and enrolled acreage cannot include land that is used agriculturally or residentially. It cannot be in CRP, CREP, RIM, or green acres. If you don't know what those are, not a problem. Unless you have it on your property, then you should not. Then you should know what those are. But and then you cannot be in both 2C tax and SFIA on the same parcel. I've had clients that have like 2 80-acre parcels side by side, and they've enrolled one parcel in SFIA and the other parcel in 2C tax. That's acceptable. And by parcel, I mean like a county identified parcel with its own property identification number, or something you'd get a tax statement on. Second similarity is you have to have a woodland stewardship plan less than 10 years old that is registered with the DNR. That registration process with the DNR kind of happens automatically in the background. You don't really have to worry about that. Um, Also, just so you're aware, a woodland stewardship plan, or WSP as I'm abbreviating here, they're also commonly known as forest stewardship plan or forest management plan. Um, but generally speaking, they're referred to as woodland stewardship plans. But if you hear forest stewardship plan, forest management plan, it's probably the same thing I'm talking about here. And then the third similarity is the landowner is agreeing to actively abide by the stewardship plan. And yeah, it doesn't mean you have to do absolutely everything I'm recommending in the first year or three, but it does want the financial incentives are there because they want people to be taking an active hand in managing their land. And also this is why it's very important for us to understand what your goals are, because we want to write plans that um, are something that you want to do anyway, right? You may have an idea, but we're giving you the information and the background and the expertise to help you kind of figure out what that thing is to do. So we really want to understand what your goals are and what you use the property for to help us write that plan, write a good plan for you that is easy to follow. And I'll move into the two different programs individually. So the 2C tax, I call that kind of a low risk, moderate reward option. Um, it reduces the property tax rate on eligible acres from 1% to 0.65%. And almost always what that is land that is currently classified rural vacant land that has a 1% tax rate. When you get a stewardship plan and you apply for the 2C tax classification, your tax rate will drop to 0.65%. So easy numbers, if you were paying $1,000, you'd be paying 650 instead. There's a there's a lot of nuances with Minnesota property tax law, so that's kind of just saying that's basically just an average. Gives you an idea how much you're going to save. And then also keep in mind that the stewardship plan is good for 10 years. It makes you eligible for that 2C tax benefit for 10 years. So as your assessed values increase, your savings will increase also over that time period. And most people's assessed values go up. I hear a few people talk about how much their land values went down. So it's a good option for properties that are assessed at higher than average values, or where the landowner wishes to keep their options open for land management or for future land use. Because it's easy to get into 2C tax. It's easy to get out if you need to or want to. And again, it's a classification. 2C tax is a classification. It's just like residential or seasonal residential recreation or agricultural. It's a classification. It's not a covenant like SFIA is. We'll get into that. Okay. If you can, don't be afraid to drop in those questions. Or will people have the opportunity to just talk questions, Kaylee, just to pipe up later?
Yes, you'll
Okay,
have the
good,
opportunity to later.
good.
We do have one that showed up in the Q&A, but we can address that
Okay,
at the end.
okay, good. SFIA, again, that stands for Sustainable Forest Incentive Act. It is a covenant and it has restrictions, but it doesn't restrict everything you do. And you can still harvest timber, you can still have small food plots, you can still have trails, you can have shooting lanes. It's not horribly restrictive, but there are restrictions that you don't want to violate. It's a very popular program, but in my opinion, you should only enroll in it after you've done your due diligence and some thorough research and understand it reasonably well and feel comfortable with it. And by reasonably understanding it reasonably well, what I'm getting at is it's been around since 2001 and I learn new stuff every year about SFIA. So you're not going to know everything, but hopefully, if you do your due diligence, you'll understand a lot. Sorry. So in SFIA, you have the option to enroll in one of 3 different covenant lengths that have covenant minimum lengths of 8, 20, or 50 years. And I emphasize minimum length because these are not fixed time frames. That's a common misunderstanding that if you enroll in a 20-year covenant, then you're immediately free of it after 20 years. That is not true. These covenants will go on until the earth dies, unless somebody requests withdrawal. So, and there is a process for withdrawal. And it's a little bit complicated. I don't know if I want to spend a lot of time on it, but just the important part is you have to understand that these are not fixed time frames. They're minimum enrollment periods. And so there's an incrementally higher payment rate for the longer the covenant that you have. And I'll just bring my screen down a little bit. Can you see that, Kaylee, that whole payment chart?
Yes, I can see
Okay.
it.
This chart is a screen grab off the Minnesota Department of Revenue website. It shows the actual payment rates for 2026. So 8-year covenant is at $12.13 an acre. 20 years, $16.79 an acre, and the 50 years, $21.46 an acre. And again, I tell my clients, don't get into SFIA just for the dollar signs. Make sure that it's a good fit. And I'm not trying to discourage you from going into SFIA. I think it's probably more popular than 2C tax, but if you don't understand it and you don't understand what it requires of you and prohibits, you could have some buyer's remorse, so to speak. But like I say, it's very popular and can be a great program. The worst case scenario that sorry, I'm starting to ramble a little bit. If you are going into SFIA and it's a family property, or you're gonna hand it down to your kids at some point, who's ever involved in that property or will be involved, I highly encourage you to involve them. If not in the decision-making process, at least make sure they're informed. And here's the case in point. I had a new client call me a couple years back, said she needed a new stewardship plan. And so I went out there and I found that she was pasturing cattle in the woods. And what happened was her husband did all the work of getting the property into SFIA. He got Alzheimer's. She ended up strapped for cash. And so she rented out the woods for pasture use. And that was a violation of the covenant. And that was just a lot of heartache and headache for her that she really didn't need. So the point being here, involve your family members if you're considering this. Because they'll thank you for it later. Let's see. This isn't an issue for most people, but if you have more than 1,920 acres and you enroll them all in SFIA, you must allow year-round, non-motorized public access to fish and wildlife resources, meaning you have to allow hunting and fishing on your land and access, basically. Not a problem for most people, but worth throwing in there. I tell people all the time on the phone, I could literally talk for an hour easily just on SFIA. And I don't say that to scare you from it. I just really want my clients to be well informed. So if this is of interest to you and you want to chat with us more, feel free to reach out to us and we'll set something up. There was a recent legislative change to SFIA which becomes effective in 2027, possibly 2028. I'm not positive on that. But the backstory to it is up up to the current point in time, the law has always been the state cannot reduce the payment rates for SFIA by more than 10% in any given year. The state tried to reduce that by 30% last year. They ran into a lot of resistance and the law. And so what they chose to do instead is change the law so that they could reduce it by more than 10%. And that will take effect in 2027. And also the payments will be reduced by 10% in 2027. So if you go back up here, you can see the payments are less in 2027. The take-home message for this is I don't know what's going to happen to the payment rates with SFIA going into the future. Maybe nothing. Maybe the law will get changed back. I don't know. But just reading the tea leaves and knowing that they tried to change it by 30% last year, and now they're changing the law so that they can change it by more than 10%, makes me think that they've got their sights set on changing it more than 10%. So I don't know. We'll see. So the Minnesota Forestry Association is our state's oldest conservation organization, and its primary function is to educate and advocate for private forest landowners. I'm on the board of that, and we're watching the situation pretty close. Where was I going with that? So if you want to support that organization, that'd be great. You can become a member or just donate. Again, that's the Minnesota Forestry Association, but we'll see how that whole legislative change works out, or what it has, what the effect is. But I hate to scare people away from SFIA, and I'm not trying to do that. But I do want people to be fully informed. So that's all I've got, Kaylee, at this point.
Well, that was awesome. Thank you, Stan. We've got 2 questions here in the Q&A. So Jim is asking, he has 40 acres with a house. Does the property need to be divided to enroll in the programs?
No, no. So that's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it because it's something I almost always comes up. In the 2C tax classification, what would happen in that situation is the county will split classify your property, and 10 acres around your home or group of structures, if that's the case, would be classified as it is and not as the 2C managed forest land classification. So if the rest of it's woods or natural areas that are qualifying, then 30 acres would be eligible for 2C tax, and the other 10 acres would remain at or stay at whatever rate it is, essentially. And where those lines are drawn, I don't know and can change, but basically you can probably think of it as like a box, a 10-acre box around your building. For SFIA, it's a little different story. When you file a covenant for enrolling in SFIA, you have to exclude a minimum of 3 acres around a building site, for instance. You can do more, but you have to do a minimum of 3. And furthermore, this comes up a lot of times. If you have, like, say you have 80 acres, you just bought it, and there's no building on it. If you enroll in SFIA and you ever want to build on it in the future, you'd have to pre-exclude a 3-acre minimum site, roughly about where you're going to build, and as part of the enrollment process. You can't change your mind, or you can't enroll the whole 80 acres in SFIA and then 3 years later say, hey, I want to build, can I exclude 3 acres? It doesn't work that way. You'd have to go through the whole term of the SFIA covenant, get out of it, do what you want to do, and then you'd have to wait 3 years to get back in. So Um, yeah, hopefully that answers the question.
I think that
Answers the
answered the
question.
question.
Okay.
I did want to ask, building off of that, just it for a forest stewardship plan in general, how does having a house on that acreage work? Do you generally split it based off of which incentive program the landowner is running towards? Or if they just wanted that forest stewardship plan, how would you parcel off or break off that homestead?
Okay, so they're just kind of interested in the stewardship plan itself. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Then I mean, and we do this generally on all plans. We would delineate around the house and yard or whatever the case may be, and just call that a residence, you know what I mean, or something along those lines, or cabin.
Mm,
Um, and then just address the rest of it as it is.
okay.
Um,
Yeah.
and we'll do that in the plans too. Like we don't draw a 10-acre box around the house if they're going into 2C tax, because I don't really know where the county's gonna put that box anyway. And there's, it could be 9 acres of woods that we want to address in the stewardship plans.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. Moving on to the next question, we got Brandon Tucker asks, how much time does it take to build these plans, have it approved, and enroll in a program?
Okay, um, so for us, we've got, we could have 3 to 5 months worth of work kind of in the queue. Um, but so that doesn't mean it's gonna take 3 to 5 months to get to any individual property. Um, uh, so how much time does it take to get through the process? So that's gonna depend on which forester you choose, I would think. But for us, I would say probably, um, depending on, probably on average, it's probably 6 months, I'm guessing, between the time when somebody calls us to do a stewardship plan and we actually get it done. But there's, uh, there's essentially 4 different deadlines throughout the year that we're working on. And so if somebody calls us today and says, hey, I want to get into SFIA, by the application deadline this fall of October 31st, there's enough time in there where we'll take note of that. We'll try to get them in before then. They call us on October 1st and say we want to get into SFIA. It's like probably not going to happen, in
Hmm.
3 weeks. So, um, do you think that answers the question, Kaylee?
I believe so. Brandon, if that didn't answer your question, please let us know in the chat. Same for you, Jim. And then next question, Jeff Trika. What is the cost of the plan and what is the benefit? So I know I can answer this a little bit. Every forester does charge a little bit differently. The DNR standard, I believe, is $300 flat rate with $10 per acre, last I checked, but that can vary up or down. And then we have a cost share program where we can reimburse for 75% of the cost of having that plan written. So, regardless of how much you pay, we can cover 75% of that. And then, Stan, if you wanted to talk a little bit about your pricing scale or your thoughts on the benefit of having a plan.
Yeah. I'll start with the benefit of having a plan. That I was walking in my woods yesterday, my 2 acre woods with a house in the middle of it. And I was just walking, and the slower I walked, the more I noticed. And I think it's really easy for a lot of people to kind of notice that generally there are trees around me, and yes, I enjoy it. But I'm a firm believer in that knowledge breeds appreciation. So the more you know about your woods and how they function, and why some trees are growing here and why others aren't, and how can I work towards what I think is a positive outcome, the more you're going to appreciate it. So I think the value of, and we do try to make our plans valuable for the landowner, not just from a finance, like which program can I get into to save me money? We want them to be valuable on their own merit. Um, as far as the pricing is concerned, this is going to be public and posted, right? This recording. So
Yes. Yes.
it's not a wise business move for me to talk about my pricing. Um, but we our mission and goals as a company can be summarized in the fact that we want to inspire and empower people to be good stewards of the land that they love and have a positive impact on both them and the land. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's my answer.
Yeah, Jeff, you can let us know if that answered your question, but I think that's a good point that the plans can help you learn about your property and how to appreciate it and how to better it if you need to. But then also you maybe get some incentive financially on the side. There's no other questions that I can see. So if anyone has any last minute questions, they can raise their hands or add it into the chat. I was curious. So here in Bemidji, because I'm based out of the Bemidji office, um, there's been a lot of discussion about forest fire just with all of the brush and fuel that's gone down in the blowdown last summer. Or even like before this, have you ever considered fire in your plans when it comes to like a management, like a prescribed burn or like a um, preparation for a burn?
uh, Preparation for a prescribed burn.
Yeah, or like an accidental burn. I guess that's hard to include as preparation, but
Yeah. Well, we have, and sometimes I notice things, you know, just by walking around, that like, hey, maybe consider this. A lot of that stuff has to do with just access to your property so that firefighters can get there and save your house. But no, we have addressed that. Um, Prescribed fire does would be a great tool, but it's rarely used in Minnesota for a variety of reasons. Some of which
mhm.
is our burn window is pretty short, where we have the ideal conditions for that. You go down south and they burn a lot, like southern US. Um, and then also they have, slightly different uh, laws that make it easier or less risky, I guess, to burn. But no, yeah, I mean, it's if that's of concern, um, people should tell us that as part of their goals. And otherwise, we're kind of watching for some of that. Big issues there are like, hey, can firefighters see your fire number? So they, at the end of your driveway, can they get into your driveway? Do you have, firewood stacked up against your propane tank? Things like that, that you wouldn't necessarily think about. Do you have defensible space, or is the woods right up against your windows?
Mhm.
Just little things like that. And the Minnesota DNR has, I think it's called the Firewise program. You can look that up online too and get information on that. So, if I
Yeah.
if I could I'd like to circle back to the pricing thing. You mentioned the DNR prices.
Yeah,
Um,
and that hasn't been
I
updated in quite some time, so I know it's a little
well,
bit out of date.
that's kind of been an ongoing point of contention among consulting foresters and the DNR. It's
Mhm.
I think we generally find it unrealistic to build and maintain a thriving business at those rates, but they're available at that rate. If but not, I mean, it's tough. The DNR foresters are pretty busy,
Yeah.
but anyway.
Yeah, so we did get two more questions while we were chatting just now. So Jeff has asked, does it make a difference if your property is next to a state land? How quickly can you change plans? Um, for the financial, I'm a finance guy, so I'll need to know cash flows on this.
I'm not sure I understand the questions.
Why don't we piece it apart? So does it make a difference if your property is next to state land?
Not for any reason I can think of.
Okay,
I'm
I
not,
know that
yeah.
for an easement, like a conservation easement, it would make a difference, but I don't believe for any forest stewardship program, it makes a difference.
I've never run into that as far as the woodland stewardship plan is concerned.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
For
know that
SFIA or 2C tax.
from our cost share perspective, we do like to provide cost share to acres that are close to state land because we want to keep it contiguous. Right now, we're pretty flush with funds, so we're not ranking our forest stewardship plan reimbursements, but in the future, that would be a consideration. The next part of Jeff's question is how quickly can you change plans? So Jeff, do you mean like changing between 2C and SFIA, or do you mean changing like your stewardship plan? Because the stewardship plan lasts 10 years, and I don't believe people generally update it within those 10 years.
Yeah, if he's talking about changing programs, you can easily switch from 2C tax to SFIA, and for some people I've suggested that, like, hey, if you're unsure if you want to go into 2C tax or SFIA, and you won't decide for several years, just go into 2C tax because you can change your mind at a later time easily. There might be a 1 year gap in there or a half a year gap, but nothing substantial. For SFIA, you have to remain in it for the minimum length you chose of either 8, 20, or 50 years.
Oh,
And I can
okay.
just talk. Oh,
He,
clarification.
Jeff did update. He said, by change plans, I mean if I decide to build a house or cabin.
Well, you wouldn't need to. Oh, change his plans, maybe is what he means, not the stewardship plan.
Oh, okay. Personal
Um,
plans.
well, so I'll try to answer that. If you want to enroll in SFIA, I would strongly suggest that you identify a 3 acre area and that you want to build on first, and you would delineate that out on your SFIA covenant paperwork. Okay. For 2C tax, it doesn't really matter because you got to pull a building permit. The county knows your building. They'll just split classify it automatically. Um, I want to answer. And who is this that asked that question?
Jeff Trika?
Okay, Jeff. Yeah, I mean, if you want to schedule or connect with us at a later time, I can maybe talk with you. I do better having these kind of conversations on the phone,
Hmm.
generally.
And then you can get more detail specific too when it's one-on-one. I get it.
Right.
Um, Jeff, do you feel that that kind of answered your question? If not, maybe you can reach out to Stan individually. But we did get another comment in the meantime. Jim is asking if you could explain a little bit more about the covenants. Once you're in a covenant, you're in forever and subsequent landowners.
Once you're in a covenant, you have to remain in it for the minimum length you chose, either 8, 20, or 50 years. If nobody, if and the covenant is tied to the land, not the landowner. So the covenant will go on indefinitely until the landowner chooses to request withdrawal. Um, can you repeat the question too? I want to make sure I covered it all.
Yeah, so he says, can you explain more about covenants? Once you agree, you are in forever and subsequent landowners.
Okay, I think I answered that
Yeah, so
pretty well.
basically
Yeah,
you're in the covenant for the length of time that you choose, which is either 8 years, 20 years, or 50 years. And that's only for the Sustainable Forestry Incentive Act.
right,
Right.
right.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll try to
Um,
quickly touch on the withdrawal process because that's probably going to be a question for some anyway. If This is always a challenge for me to describe well. Um, you have to be in it for the minimum of 8, 20, or 50 years, whichever one you choose. And from the time that you request withdrawal, you have to wait half of that minimum time frame to be free of it. So we'll take the 20-year for easy math. If you choose a 20-year covenant, the first time you can request withdrawal is at year 10 of enrollment. And then if you did that, you would be out at year 20. And this is why it's important to know that there are minimum timeframes. I've had people say, hey, I want to get out of my covenant now because my 8 years is up. Okay, you can request withdrawal, but now that person has to wait for half of that 8 years or 4 more years to be free of the covenant. So even though they thought they were going to be out at 8, best case scenario is they're out at 12. For the
Mm.
20, if you waited until the 20 years was up and you're retired and now you want to do something else, you want to get out, well, now you got to wait another 10 years. So if you want to be in it for that minimum and that minimum only, mark it on your calendar for halfway through to request withdrawal.
Okay, so you've got to be halfway, or when you request withdrawal, you need to wait half of the time until you can actually withdraw.
Yes,
Okay.
and you have to be in it for the minimum. So the earliest you can withdraw is halfway through that covenant. The earliest you can request withdrawal is halfway through that covenant. And
Okay.
anytime thereafter, you're still going to wait half of the covenant length that you chose.
Okay. And then Jeff did update and said that he just wants to make sure that he's not paying $5,000 to save $200 a year, which I understand,
Possible.
Jeff.
Yep.
And I just want to reiterate that we have a cost share program. So if your bill is $5,000, we can reimburse you for 75% of that. So you would only be paying a couple thousand on top of that. And then depending on obviously the covenant that you sign up for, or the tax, if you do the tax rate reduction, that would change what you save. I don't know if Stan, you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, no, that's a very reasonable question.
Yeah.
So if you want to know, so what I tell people, if you want to know exactly how much you're going to save by going into 2C tax, call your county assessor and say, hey, with today's numbers, if I have a stewardship plan, how much would I save on my property in taxes? But then remember that the stewardship plan is good for 10 years. And generally speaking, assessed values go up, which means because it's a percent reduction in your tax rate, as your values increased, so will your savings. So where the first year you might save $300, who knows, 10 years from now, you might be saving $3,000.
Mm.
So it's, that's a, it's a crystal ball question, but you just gotta work with what you know, um, take it from there. And the SFIA again, that's kind of a wild card right now, but what your payments are going to be like in the future. Um, and then you have to remember it's taxable income. So for those people that are like, I'm making this decision based on finances alone, um, talk to the county assessor if you're thinking about 2C tax, and then um, calculate your tax rate on your income for the SFIA payments. I mean, there's a lot to kind of hash out there, but um, yeah, hopefully that helps. But
Yeah, I think that answered the question. I'm not seeing any further questions. We looks like we're kind of creeping up on that 1 hour mark, which is what we had kind of said that the meeting would be. So if anyone has any last minute questions, raise your hand now. If not, we can kind of bring it to a close here. And if you have any pressing questions after this meeting, you can reach out to me or Stan, and we can do our best to answer them and help you out. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. This meeting is recorded. Stan, you're raising your hand.
yeah, no, I just um, as a nature lover and somebody who likes the woods, sometimes it's kind of sad to me that I have to talk so much about financial stuff. I just don't want I don't want the the conservation and the stewardship aspect to get lost in all of this. I mean, there's some
Mhm.
real satisfaction and reward in being able to understand your woods better, have a better grasp on what's what's a smart move for how to manage your woods. And you can avoid a lot of disappointing mistakes too by having professionals around you and helping you out with that decision making process. So
100%. I agree. I think it's so helpful sometimes to have that professional advice to know that you're making the right decisions when it comes to making sure that your forests stay healthy while you have them. Yeah, well, again, I'm not seeing any further questions. Thank you all for joining us today. I really appreciate everyone who attended the meeting. Stan, thank you so much for presenting.
of course,
This meeting will be, or it has been recorded, and we will be posting it on our website pending a review by Stan and myself. But yeah, thank you guys again, and have a good rest of your evening. And I
thank you,
will end the
Kaylee.
call now. Yeah, thank you. Good night.